Hi, I'm Sunny Bottoms, and this is Between Two Levees. Today, my guest is Jeremy Jones of Isbell Farms near England, Arkansas. Thanks for joining me, Jeremy.
Thank you, Sunny. It's good to be here and glad to have the opportunity.
Great. Well, I've known you for quite a few years, but you have a really good story to tell on the farm. So give us the background of what you all farm and your whole operation.
We're a multi-generational farm. I married into the family almost 30 years ago, but Leroy Isbell, my wife's grandfather, started the farm as we know it now. What sets us apart, kind of our history, is we grow continuous rice on almost 100% zero grade acres, about 3,500 acres. And we have one field that's been in rice for, I believe it's 64 years this year. That's pretty unusual. That sets us apart from everyone else. And we've taken what he created back then, starting in the 60s and 70s, and have tried to bring that forward, into the future. For our kids and future generations.
That's very cool. Sounds like you really married up too.
I did marry up. I really did.
So you grow in continuous rice, and I believe we'll have a shot of that field that's been in production for 64 years. So you're growing some mainstream varieties, but you're also growing some specialty varieties. So
we've done a little bit of everything in the past. We grew medium grain traditionally. In the early 90s, we started growing a Japanese short grain variety called Koshiakari. We actually sent some of that rice into Japan in the mid 90s when the market opened up there. That played out, but we had a seed bank of Japanese varieties that at the time we didn't even really know what they were. But we learned that one of those varieties that we had, and I guess we got those in the early 90s, was Yamada Nishiki, which is kind of the king of rice for sake production. So now our niche market, I guess you'd say, is growing rice for sake production, and we do that on about 10% of our acres.
That's very interesting. And then I think you were telling me earlier you were also growing some sushi rice.
We are. We still grow some medium grain that's suited for the South that we're sending into Japanese food markets for sushi production. Table rice, but it's a very good quality sushi rice.
So you have big plans to be able to capture your own fish out of your ditch and then grow your own. You got your rice, you got your fish, you can make your own sushi rolls. I see that as being a great market for you in the future.
Right. It is. It's something we've worked on for a long time. My father-in-law, Chris Isbell, has worked on that. It's been his dream to be able to capture a portion of that market that traditionally California and the western states have had. And we've had some success at that. The sake thing really also sets us apart. We've had some success in that, and we see that really being where we're putting a lot of our efforts in the next few years, because we see that market really growing in the United States.
That's really interesting. I think that's a really cool thing, and we now have a sake distillery here in Arkansas.
Origami has opened up in Hot Springs that we're partnered with them. There's going to be a sake mill that we're setting up in conjunction with them in England, Arkansas. So everything will be done right here in the state, and then we'll distribute from that mill to anyone that needs it.
That's very interesting. So now let's go on to some weed control programs, because
that's what I know more about than anything else. Someone else should be talking about the marketing and the business of the sake rice, but weed control is my wheelhouse.
Okay, well, give us a rundown of your basic weed control, and then what the difference in this field has been this year versus what you're typically doing.
So we in the past, we were traditional medium grain or short grain or conventional varieties before hybrids came on the market. We were a water seed farm. We didn't have a grain drill until maybe 2009, 2010. Even when hybrids came out, we water seeded hybrids. Even when Clearfield came around, we were water seeding Clearfield or Clearfield hybrids. And like a lot of other people, especially continuous rice growers, we overused some of those technologies. So we built some weed resistance. When Previsia came around, we grew some Previsia acres. And those were that helped us clean some fields up and let us get back into some of the specialty things that we were doing, because those are all conventional varieties. And so you have to go back to a more conventional weed program in those varieties. So as we had more and more resistant grass, more and more resistant weeds, we started to kind of look back into the playbook from the 80s, from the 90s. And this field in particular is medium grain that we water seeded. And so history on it, this is a very heavy clay soil, or what we call buckshot. It's not friendly to a grain drill. It's always either too wet or too dry. So you have to flush the field to get the rice to come up, and it's very cloddy. It just works better in a water seeded environment. So we worked this field to dry clods. We applied Bolero, and somewhat like they do in California, we ran a groover roller to kind of prepare the seed bed have a place for the seed to fall into. And then we flew pre-sprouted seed into the field in 3 or 4 inches of water. When the rice was just starting to emerge, or what we call peg down, we dropped the water really low. We never really let it dry up, just a pinpoint flood. And then we brought the water back up and put Rogue on the field. And that held it for a long time. We had a few weeds that Rogue didn't get, so we came back in with some Gambit, and that's all this field has had. So just Bolero, 1 application of Rogue, and 1 application of Gambit.
That's really interesting. And so the Gambit, I know Rogue is weak on red stem and things like that, and so the Gambit can really bring something to the table.
And that's what we've seen is the red stem is something that we've had to come back in with the Gambit and try to help clean that up.
Well, it's a beautiful field, so obviously it's working for you in that.
And this was we don't do any experiments on a small scale. If we do an experiment, it's usually on a couple of 100 acres, I think. So this was kind of an experiment to see if this technique, we knew it would work, but we wanted to see how well it would work, because in the past, when we were doing water seeded rice, medium grain, or whatever conventional variety, we had so much trouble controlling aquatics. So with Rogue on the market now, Gambit on the market now, we wanted to see if the new herbicides that we had available to us would help us to be able to get back into this kind of rice growing culture.
Well, thank you, Jeremy. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Sonny.
And information, and I'm looking forward to some of that sake.
Oh, yeah. We should have brought some out.
You should have.